Alcohol Tipping Point is brought to you in partnership with Speak Studios and Speak Boise. Speak Boise is a community-driven studio space where voices from all walks of life can speak and be heard. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Speak Studios, Speak Boise, and at their website, speakstudios.com. Speak Studios, speak and be heard. This podcast is also brought to you by Instant Imprints. Promote better with Instant Imprints. Instant Imprints are Boise's visual communications experts and your place for everything you need to promote your business, club, school, or group. As a locally owned business, Instant Imprints specializes in making your organization more visible with custom branded apparel, embroidery, promotional items, print services, and wide format printing for signs, as well as banners and vehicle graphics. Want better ways to get noticed? Visit Instant Imprints at instantimprints.com/Boise or call 208-IMPRINT. That's 208-467-7468. Welcome back to the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm your host, Debbie Maisner, and today I have Cathy Charles on the show, and she is a Sobriety Connector, a mom and a school counselor, and she's living recovery out loud. So welcome, Cathy.
Thank you for having me, Debbie. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Where are you calling from?
I am hailing from Cleveland, Ohio.
Awesome. So Midwest.
Yes.
Okay, Cleveland. And tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Let me think here. I will be 2 years sober, coming up here, as of July 22nd.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, my journey, I'm a mom of two, kind of grown children, a 19-year-old and a almost 23-year-old. And I am by day a high school counselor, guidance counselor, and I really have found a passion. It's kind of my passion project as a visual storyteller of my own story, living it out loud, and connecting other people and their stories, and what people are doing in the sobriety community to make themselves better and help the community, and really helping spread that wealth, the sobriety wealth, to the world.
That's fantastic. I think it's so important to recover out loud and just reduce the stigma. We've kind of been hiding behind our shame.
It's funny. I just had coffee with a friend and we were talking about that. And I really, it took me a long time to talk about this out loud. And I went through phases of, I had like Instagram accounts where I didn't really say who I was and all that. And then I finally broke loose a while ago. I'm also a co-host of a Getting Back to Zero, which is a live sobriety show on Facebook. And I started because I was interviewed, just like I am now. And I just really, that's when I made the decision that I was going to let people know. And anybody can watch it. So and it was such a freeing feeling. Like, I didn't realize how I had really put myself into a box until that moment. And I was I have just, there's like no turning back for me because I love it so much. I am whole. I am authentic. I am who I am. And really, as a guidance counselor, shouldn't I be talking about the stigmas, And so if I could be living proof that we need to talk about this, that's my passion.
Yeah, so important. So what has your experience with alcohol been?
Well, I was a little bit of a late bloomer. I really, when I think back on it, in probably high school and college, if I did have alcohol, I was a blackout drinker. So therefore, I just thought I didn't do alcohol well. So I didn't really touch it until my 30s after going through a divorce. And it became pretty much, as I always describe it, it became my partner in life. It gave
Mhm.
me liquid courage. The wine bottle, the wine glass, I could do anything with it. And it really became a slippery road by, a couple of years ago. I just really realized that, really it was one of my children said, Mom, this, you are not healthy with this. And it made me really look at it. And I, for a year, started controlling it, controlling the drinking. And by the end, I was exhausted. I just couldn't do it anymore. And so almost 2 years ago, I put it down completely. And for the first 8 months, I really was in shame and in isolation. I saw no worth in myself. And then I found a community through Laura McGowan's The Luckiest Club. She was starting grassroots right when the pandemic hit, and that just broke me wide open. And I've been just finding community left and right since then. And it's been so healing with the shame, the guilt, the everything that comes, finding my worth. I say the word worth over and over again because I saw none in myself. And so, I had a couple of rock bottoms, but, it took it just being exhausted with myself to make the change.
So when and it sounds like you tried to control or moderate, like
Yeah.
I'm raising my hand, me too. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're right. It's just kudos to those who can do it. And, I forever was like looking for the magic pill of moderation. Like, if I could just be a quote unquote normal drinker.
Right. And if I stop for a while, that will help. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Just doing a lot of dry months. And I just wasn't ready to break up with it yet. I mean,
no, we had to have, a drag out, like, let me just make sure I really don't like you anymore type of relationship. I would agree.
So when you first quit and it stuck, you mentioned that for 8 months it was kind of miserable. Is that right?
Yes.
So what were you
Miserable.
doing to stop then? Like, did you have any support? What was going on then?
I always joke that I called it the Cathy plan versus, like a healthy plan. So, I joined like a 90-day challenge. Like, so I stopped, but didn't tell, only one person knew. The guy I was in a relationship with at that point knew. And then we broke up, and then I joined like a 90-day challenge through Rachel Hollis, David Hollis, where you give up something. So I joined that community. Long story short, Michelle Smith from Recovery is the New Black was in that community, and I had said I had given up alcohol and given up sugar, and she reached out and said, hey, join my online community. So I kind of half looked at that. But really the Cathy plan at the time was a couple of things. So I did that. So I felt like I was being healthy, living a healthy lifestyle. I really consulted with no doctors, which I would never suggest now. But I got an acupuncturist. I did a meditation program, but I did it alone. I did a lot of things alone. I did not want to talk to people about things. I did have a therapist who I talked to, but I didn't really get deep with. I wasn't really, I was in such a state of shock and in so much pain. And then the last thing I did was, I was looking for jobs outside of the country because I was trying to do a geographical cure as well. So, all of that really came to a head when the pandemic came, and I had to really sit still. I couldn't keep running outside. And it's kind of interesting to me that the pandemic actually forced me to get community. And I find that, like a paradox in a way, like take away to get, you have to give it away to get it type of a thing.
Yeah, so it was the community aspect that really helped you heal.
It did, because it made me say, how you just said earlier, like you raised your hand. I thought I was the only person. I thought I was the only professional. Like, I did not want to go, and I'm not disparaging because I'm in it now, but I did not want to go to AA. I did not, like I had a certain stigma that's in, I just really was in a lot of shame. And so when I was going to Laura McGowan's meetings, she was a professional woman who was saying the same things as me. And I was learning terminologies like shape shifting and how to get curious with yourself, and that, it wasn't about willpower. There's a whole science behind this, and the subconscious, and just really learning the mind, body, soul connection that I just really thought I was weak. I really did, until I went into community.
Yeah, I think that I can relate to that so much. I think that the stigma kept me from getting help sooner, because I wasn't, quote unquote, rock bottom. I could still function. My job as a nurse and a mom, you're in a helping profession as well, so you can relate.
Right.
And I thought that AA and rehab were my only options. And I just was like, I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. And so then for me, finding community was, I did the alcohol experiment with Annie Grace. Are you familiar with her and the Snake at Mine?
Yeah, well, funny, I went to coffee with a friend before this, and that's what she had done. She was telling me more about it. I find that to be, if I would have known about that, that would have been really, she was talking about the subconscious and really understanding connecting the dots. It's a powerful program.
Yeah. And also, like what you said, the community was so important to me, because there's a Facebook group with it, all free. And just knowing like, oh, I'm not alone. There's like all these quote unquote normal people out there that are struggling with their drinking too. And I just, like they do say like the opposite of addiction is community, and I can relate.
So true. It is so true. And I mean, the fact how I isolated so hard for 8 months. I mean, it's amazing that I made it 8 months with not drinking.
Well, tell me it sounds like you've learned so much. What would you say your top tips are for anyone that's looking to change their relationship with alcohol?
I love that question. I would say, number one, get curious with yourself. Instead of beating yourself up, journal about it. Almost, connect the dots about how you're feeling, what your trends are. Do data on yourself. Get curious. And then start to get plugged in. And plugged in can mean a lot of things. I would say, listen to podcasts. Find a community to just, even if you go on Zoom, like I was going on Zoom with Laura's meeting with my camera off and just listening and sobbing, but listening. And slowly, just plug in all the good. And I'm stealing that line from Michelle Smith. That's advice she had given. And that I think that I just didn't know what I didn't know back then. And then slowly, as you hear others, and so I would say plug in with podcasts, with books, whatever it is, but then plug into a community where you are at your point. If you are at a point where I don't want to talk to anybody, it took me 3 months, 8 months, to get into community, and then 3 months to ever use my voice. I just had to listen and absorb. And then finally there was a talk at one of the meetings on shape shifting, and I always just thought I was a liar. I always just thought that, like, I just couldn't tell the truth. I couldn't be comfortable with myself. I never understood, even though I'm a guidance counselor, couldn't understand the psychology behind everything that had happened in my life. And so I would say get curious, about yourself, and then plug in to not only what's out there, but plug into a community where you feel safe, that you can listen until you can use your voice. And because I think community, and then if you are comfortable, reach out to just one person that resonates with you. It just takes one person. So it's actually 3 tips. I apologize, but I think that I was so isolated. If you would have told me I had to reach out to somebody, I would have freaked out. So I think, I needed breadcrumbs slowly.
Yeah, and growth is slow and changing is slow. I mean, we just don't magically change overnight.
Right, right.
You mentioned shape shifting a couple times, and
Yeah.
I can only think of like sci-fi. So, like, wow, are you a shapeshifter? Tell me what is shape shifting?
I would have to look up the exact
Okay.
definition. Basically, it's it's shaping who you are with whatever environment you're in at that point. So I am the youngest of seven, and I went to seven different schools by the time I was in ninth grade. I
Wow.
had no I had no identity. Whatever room I was in, whatever situation was in, I would just do anything and say anything to fit in. So I never knew who I was. I never knew who Cathy was. I never understood my worth. And so if you said, I always think of that one. There's a movie where I think Runaway Bride, where he likes whatever, so she likes whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And with every relationship, she changes it because whatever he liked. That's how I was. Like if you said you liked this music, I would say sure, that's my favorite too, even if I hated it. And I just, I would, and so I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being truthful because I never knew who I was.
Yeah, that is so interesting and true. And a great name.
It
Um,
is. And I never knew there was a terminology to it.
mhm.
I never knew that it was a thing. I was just thought it was me, it was my upbringing. It's who I was. And and it's also attached to like people pleasing.
Mhm.
And when you study trauma, there's a thing called fawning, which is a form of trauma, and it's people pleasing. And so it was such a it was literally the thing that broke me open, that there are other people that are again like me, and that there was more of a root than I ever realized.
Yeah, I think that awareness and identity and naming things is so key. Like when you can name it, you can feel it. It becomes more real, and then you can either accept it or move on to it or do what you need to do.
Right. Exactly. And then, from there, I was able to see other things, like it was like that spotlight that finally came out of the dark
Mhm.
for me. And then it just like brightened up other things that I could look at and slowly then from there, finding tools to heal and work through things.
Yeah, well, I mean, those are great tips and great things to learn. And like you said, you're celebrating 2 years alcohol
Yeah.
free. What do you think's different? And you've kind of already touched about that, but what do you think is different about this second year versus the
The
first?
second year,
Mm-hmm.
I felt more healed. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
else to say it. Um, the first year I was just in such, well, I mean, a lot of it I spent in isolation. So the second year was a lot about connection, a lot about just how to begin to heal and heal at the same time. Um, Trying things. Like I had stopped taking risks and trying new things, talking to people. Um, it's just been the second year. There's been emotions, but they don't come on like big wave crashes. Usually, things are a little calmer in the second year for me than they were. The first year was just. I feel like I was just one big storm after another storm that wouldn't stop. And the second year has been really starting to say, is that real in your head, Cathy, or is that something you're making up? And what can you do? And even if it takes me a couple days to figure that out, but I'm learning to lean into the tools.
Yeah, I love how you said that the first year was kind of storm after storm, and then the second year is it's kind of the calm after the storm.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying the other day, I got to do with Better Roads, alcohol free. I was on their Instagram live trying an alcohol free beer. And I woke up yesterday morning and I said, I have a life I never knew I wanted. I am having so much fun.
I love that. That leads to my next question is how has your life changed since removing alcohol?
I've been sharing with everyone that I, you know, everything on the inside has changed. I don't know if anything on the outside has.
Mm-hmm.
I met up with somebody that I had met 3 years ago and hadn't seen him since. And I got out of the car. This was a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, wow, I am so different than I was 3 years ago when I started. I had met him 1 month into trying to control my drinking. And I had a beat up car and like everything was just a mess. Everything was a mess. And now, like, because of the work I have done, I have cleaned up so many things. Everything's just different. And it's so, I see the brightness. There's a quote that I think just really, really defines me, that it says, when I drank, I was numbing the darkness, but I didn't realize I was numbing the light too. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like, wow. Most days I'm like, wow. I'm one big wow. I can't say I'm like that every moment. I don't want to make it sound like, Pollyanna.
Sure.
There's been some real like, moments, but they're moments. They're not days. They're not months anymore.
Yeah, and they pass. We know that they are temporary.
Yeah. So, my life now is tons of people all around the world, getting to know them in recovery, who are in recovery. My life now is really, I always say it's so sober full. Everybody always says that's a Cathy term, but it's so sober full. Like I just have so much fun. I just went to a concert with a bunch of people who are that are sober and had a blast. I will meet with people I've never, like I had coffee with somebody today that I've never met in person. I would have called that off a couple of years ago. I wouldn't have been, even though I would have considered myself social, I would have had to have a drink to do that. Mm-hmm. And we ended up having like the best conversation for 2 hours. So, I just think that I am connecting with people that I never did before.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What do you see? I'm glad that you're on here because I'm curious, since you are a high school guidance counselor, what do you, and I have teenagers, well, I have a 12-year-old and then a 14, almost 15-year-old. So what do you tell your students or your kids or your high schoolers? Like what advice do you have for them about drinking?
It's been interesting. A couple of people have really, have asked me that. And in a way, I was really disconnected from wanting to answer that for a long time, because it was like, ooh, and, I didn't feel like I was worthy to give that advice, and now I have that conversation, that brave conversation of, we learn in the sober world, like, get curious with yourself. Mm-hmm. Do you have a history in your family? Is, how are you using this? What are you trying to avoid anything? With my own children, we've had conversations of, this is something that runs in your family. Be aware. What are you digging? What are you trying to find if you are using it? So trying to plant seeds more than anything of helping them. Just like when you asked me the question, what tips? Mm-hmm. That's kind of almost the same approach I have to have when I am talking to young adults. I know that as a young adult, I didn't like being told what to do, mm-hmm. but suggestions or planting seeds, I think, go a lot further. I might not cure their problem today or solve it, but I can give them the tools that I've been taught to start finding, like, how do I ask myself these questions and become self-aware?
Yeah, I love that you just get them questioning why do you want to drink? What is your thought process behind this? And be the scientist.
Right. I just think it's interesting when you start to think of yourself that way. And, when we've been taught and conditioned a certain way, we don't question. And I think teaching, even like, I never questioned things about myself. I just made assumptions and really was like, my own worst enemy. And I see that in other people, and especially young adults, when they're comparing themselves out with social media and all the other things that they have going on. So get curious, with yourself, and what do you think? And that just usually is such a gift that I feel like that they get, like, it's like, wow, you're right. Like, I've never thought about that. And like, why do I think I'm bad? Even if it's not about alcohol or whatever, like at that subject, I'm like, just because you don't like, you say I'm bad at math. Well, I said I used to say that, but really I just didn't like geometry, and like just trying to frame it in those ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reframing is definitely a useful tool. What would you say that you wish you had known when you were starting out?
Starting out on getting sober?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish that I would have understood community a little bit more, and that you don't have to put a label on things. I was so wrapped up in putting a label on something, and you don't have to. You don't have to at all. You don't have to explain. You don't have to anything. You can just get curious, and you can do it as quietly. You can have the sound on mute, or you can have it on full blast, but you can still do it.
Yeah. So you wish you would have reached out sooner to community.
Yes. Like, I just feel like I was so ashamed of what the damage I had caused, and so ashamed that I didn't have the willpower to stop, that I just didn't feel like, I didn't see the worth. And I think if I would have known that there were other people, there were other women, there were other mothers, there were other guidance counselors, therapists, whatever, walks of life professionals, that had these same sufferings. I suffered alone. Mm-hmm. And I no longer suffer. I thrive, because I realize, I look at it as I have a superpower now. Like, I see things in a whole different lens, and it's a gift. But I didn't see that then.
Yeah, I think that switch is so key. But from going to like, I have to quit drinking, or I can't drink alcohol, or, kind of looking at it in a negative way, and switching that to like, I get to be sober. I have given myself this gift of sobriety. It is my superpower. I am better because of it.
Yes, exactly. It's like every day is just such a gift. It's amazing. But I wish I would have known that I didn't have to do it, alone. And I kind of knew it, but I only thought there was one way. And there's a million ways you can go about connecting with people. Right. From Instagram, like even just getting on Instagram and sending a message. If you see somebody, send them a message and say, that resonated with me. Thank you. And start that way. You don't have to do this alone. And I was just really determined that I had to do it alone.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are out there doing it alone. And like you said, it only takes one other person to connect with.
Exactly. I mean, when I made one friend, and that just changed my whole world, because that friend was further along, now didn't have as much sobriety as I did, or, hadn't put the drink down as long, but was much more social than I was at that point. And she really helped me come into the light then.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So what are your plans for this beautiful life of yours? What's your plan for the future?
I'm lucky. I am just so grateful. I don't know if lucky, but grateful. I mean, right now I am, I have Sober Approved on Instagram, and the whole concept behind that is connecting everybody, in the sober world. So people who are doing podcasts, who are doing shows, music, books, whatever it is, really helping, seminars. It kind of giving a funnel to that to come through and shine light on the sober world. But I'm also a co-host on Getting Back to Zero, which is a sobriety talk show, with Jeff Graham, who runs Getting Back to Zero. My goal is really, and I'm also a host on 1,000 Hours Dry Parent page now as well. And I would say that my goal in the next is really to help women, especially who struggle with finding their worth. And there's so much out there with emotional sobriety to learn and to navigate and all of that. And I think once we put down the drink and we get past that struggle, there's so much. And so I, see myself as a connector in helping women find their worth.
Yeah, because you found your worth, and that has made all the difference.
It really has. And I just, as I talk to women, and, I did this free workshop on trauma, and figuring out that financials were my trauma most of my life. And that's what I was drinking at. And just, so I would say that I'm in the process of putting together, I'm not sure how I will title it, if it's a seminar or a community, but the traumas facing the traumas for women, and working through it, and to get, in the emotional sobriety to find the worth.
Yeah. So needed and so important.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
But it's so hilarious, because 2 years ago, I wouldn't have told you I was going to be on an Instagram Live on an alcohol-free show the other night, and tasting something that tasted like a blue moon, that I loved and I forgot I loved. And I love the surprises of this journey, and connecting with you. I would have never thought I'd be on, a podcast, and it's amazing. So I have plans, but I'm so also, I stay in the spot of remaining so open, because it's such an adventure. It's so fun now.
Yeah, I love that you reached out and you were like, I've never been on a podcast. I want to do that. And you're so I've never done Instagram Live. I'm going to do that. You're just kind of have your bucket list.
I do, and it's an adventure, and I can't say I do them all well. If you go to my Sober Approved, and I'm doing Sober Sundays, giving you I'm learning Canva. I Canva, and I have a love-hate relationship, but I'm trying, and it's so hilarious, and I'm trying. I guess I used to take myself so seriously. If that's another piece of advice too. I do not take myself very seriously. I take what I do seriously, and and the responsibility of being sober. But I'm willing to be the new kid in something. And I used to hate being the new kid, because, and also being the youngest, I didn't like to not know what I was doing or look like I didn't know. Now I know that's the way of growth for me.
That is amazing. I love that. I can relate to I want to, and I'm practicing not having things be perfect or just so, having things be good enough. Yes. That looks good enough. I'll put that out there.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's a softer way to live, and it's in the middle.
Yes, totally. Well, is there anything I should have asked you, but I didn't, or anything else that you want the listeners to hear?
You know what else I forgot to share is I'm also in this adventure, came across a woman who does sober journeys, and I am in the works right now creating 2 trips to Bali next summer, sober journeys.
That's amazing.
I know, like literally, like this is my life. It's hilarious. I'm like, how did I get here? This is amazing. So, it's just, I don't think there's anything else that I would, I think that was the only other thing I wanted to share. But, find, just telling those to just find some people, and just try things. Just get curious. I can't say that enough, because I think I just remember the suffering and the darkness so much. And I'm sitting here in my place right now, and I have all the blinds open, and my life feels like the sunshine's just coming in all the time, because I took all the broken little glass and upcycled it, and and let the light shine on it.
Oh, I love that. Can you say that again?
So I've taken all the little broken glasses that were me, and I put them back together, and they're upcycled, and I let the sun shine in on them.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for being on the podcast. Remind the listeners where they can find you.
Thank you. You can find, and thanks for having me here today. I'm at Sober Approved on Instagram.
Fantastic. Well, enjoy your neck of the woods and your weekend. And I really appreciate you and the work you're doing and recovering out loud.
Same to you. Thank you, Debbie. Have a great weekend.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm always here for you guys, so please feel free to reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point, and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com. Again, I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week. And until then, see you next time.